is my pleasure to introduce Director Ursel McElroy from the Ohio Department of Aging for our fireside chat this afternoon. So thank you. I know you were driving pretty fast to get here. So for those of you who do not know Director McElroy, she represents the interests of older adults in Ohio's executive branch of government and oversees the coordination of long-term services and supports funded by the Federal Older Americans Act, Medicaid, and other federal, state, and local dollars. She has more than 25 years' experience in local and state government, holding key positions at the Ohio Department of Youth Services, Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, and the Ohio Attorney General's Office. So welcome to our event today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Holly. Thank you. And she is correct. It was a pretty swift ride, following the speed limit, of course. From Mohican, we were at a cabinet lounge. Pardon me, not lounge, but a retreat. lodge for a retreat.
So, Director McElroy, you've been an advocate on behalf of older adults for many years. Would you describe your approach to supporting Ohio's growing aging population, and how are you rethinking what aging could look like here in Ohio?
Well, first, it's a great question, and I think it's important for everyone to understand the landscape of older adults within our state and actually across the nation. It is our fastest growing segment of the population. In fact, we are about 25%, almost a quarter of Ohio's population will be individuals aged 60 and older. In addition to the growth, we also see an expansion in the diversity, what people want, what they need, what some of their experiences have been. There also seems to be advances in life expectancy, which is great for many, but not all. We certainly do see some disparities across this particular segment with life expectancy. We also know that the level of care has also become far more complex. Mm-hmm. So there's the complexity of care, there's different sites of care, different types of care. So it is far more, I would say, complex and dynamic than it was many years ago when I first entered in this field.
So recently, Ohio has made some significant investments in aging, particularly the Healthy Aging Grants,
Correct.
As just one of the investments. How do you expect these to impact caregivers across the state?
So the Healthy Aging Grants, for those who are not familiar, it is something that we had in our executive budget, and so we were really pleased that Governor DeWine saw fit to put in place $40 million that could be used to support older adults within the home and community-based environments. The idea is that you can provide supports upstream so that individuals have a slower decline and more opportunity to be independent far longer than perhaps they would be without those supports. The $40 million is broken into all 88 counties. There is a formula. Each county receives no less than $100,000, but then based upon their population, that amount can vary. So, for example, we have some communities that can receive upward of $4 million of that $40 million. But with the Healthy Aging Grants, we are really trying to change the narrative than what we've seen before, particularly with our government funding. Much of our funding often is in response to something and not necessarily upstream and more preventative. And we know that many of the interventions that we're looking to fund can certainly be, I think, a game changer. And so this $40 million won't just be for us to have the $40 million right now, but hopefully to demonstrate that there is a huge return on investment when you invest in the right things in the right places at the right time. And that's what Healthy Aging Grants will do.
I'm glad you brought up changing the narrative, because I think that's really important, particularly around family caregivers. You know, I started the meeting with a quote from Rosalind Carter. At some point, every one of us will be impacted, whether we'll be the caregiver, care receiver.
Correct.
And so this is something that we really need to take it out of our current language, and this is impacting us. I tell people I work for AARP, and they're like, oh, okay, we don't want to, I'm not 50 yet, or I'm not acknowledging. I'm like, but at some point you will be if you're lucky enough.
Correct.
And if we are lucky enough and living in Ohio, thinking about the future and what this could look like is so important. What else do you think is needed in Ohio to really realize your vision?
Well, I think one, at our department, we have a pretty heavy focus on data so that we can demonstrate the results. It's one thing to talk about what we believe will happen. It's another to truly show the changes that have come about because of the interventions or the policies that we've put in place. And so you'll see, for example, Healthy Aging Grants is just one example of many that we have, but we embarked on results-based budgeting where, in fact, you put in place metrics to say, hey, if you invest this, these are the outcomes that you can expect. And so we fully believe that we will be able to demonstrate to the legislature, to many others outside of the legislature, why in fact it is a worthwhile investment to use these tax dollars for these particular services.
Okay. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the Nursing Home Task Force.
Okay.
So in February, Governor DeWine signed an executive order establishing the Nursing Home Quality and Accountability Task Force. It's a great opportunity for all of the stakeholders to come together and really talk about what is needed. How do we need to rethink nursing homes and long-term care here in Ohio? So can you describe the goals of the task force and what has been accomplished so far to date, because it's still going?
So, as Holly mentioned, the task force came about by executive order February 24th of 2023. And I give you these dates to give you some perspective of just how aggressive we were. We had a deadline to have a report to the governor by May 26th of 2023. So we had a 3-month pretty much timeline to do something that was transformative and that could truly make an impactful difference in the lives of nursing home residents and families and those who have to work in those nursing homes each and every day. Our goal with the task force is really simple, and that is to make excellence the expectation for every nursing home in Ohio. It shouldn't matter where you are in the state, you should expect and receive excellent care. And that is really the goal of the task force. But we didn't stop with just having a room full of experts to make these decisions. We took the show on the road, and that was a very intentional piece to this work. I believe we conducted about 12 or so listening sessions across the state to hear from residents, prospective residents, and family members who are most impacted by how we deliver care in our nursing homes. And I'm pleased to say that the task force members were very committed to this work. We delivered the report on time with really hearty recommendations, and we did so at a time when the state budget was being deliberated and finalized. And we kept true to the governor's promise that we certainly wanted to be sure that nursing homes were adequately funded, but we wanted to ensure that with that funding, we would have really good care. And so some of the things, the early things that have come out of that, I think are worth mentioning that I'm really proud and excited about. One, there was $1.4 billion additional dollars to the nursing home industry, so I think that's huge. We also see an increase in provider rates that can translate into higher wages for the staff that do this really difficult work within the nursing homes. We had an increase in some of the remedies for enforcement that are available to our state survey and licensure teams. That becomes critical because if you don't have the right remedies available, you'll either do too little or too much, and that will not correct the behavior that we're looking to modify. We also have increased funding for our long-term care ombudsman. Those are our advocates across the state. so that we can have more of a presence and more people can benefit from having access to this really vital part of our long-term care system. We also will now have more funding for our state survey team so that we can be more responsive in a more timely fashion and in a more targeted way. We're looking at a variety of things, a permanent technical assistance program that will provide support to nursing homes. There are a variety of things. If you haven't had a chance to see our report, I would certainly encourage you to do so. And what I can assure you is that this is not a report that is just going to sit on the shelf. February to May, we had it out. From May to the top of July, we had some really big wins in the state budget process, and we are now moving forward and implementing many other things. And come May of next year, we'll be able to give you yet another report on just how much we've been able to accomplish in 1 year's time.
That's exciting. One of the pieces of the task force was the focus on residents, families, and bringing it back to the caregiver discussion. How making decisions is really hard. It's usually under pressure,
Yes.
a time constraint, and sometimes really not under the best circumstances or planned circumstances. Which recommendations do you think will improve how families make decisions about care, and what should families expect in the future in Ohio?
So there are recommendations that are focused on empowering residents. I think that's really important. I don't want to lose sight of that. There are also tools that we know we can put in place to help both the residents and the caregivers. For example, we heard over and over again that having information available to make informed decisions in a timely way just eludes too many people too often. And so we are working at this moment on creating a much more enhanced dashboard and online tools so that you will have complete information as real time as we're able to provide it to families, to caregivers, to prospective residents about the status of the nursing homes across the state of Ohio. We want you to be able to dig as deeply as you would like to have the information that you need to make informed decisions about where your loved ones are.
That'll be a game changer.
That absolutely will be. Again, I want to point out, because we understood how important this was, that is a project that is currently underway. In fact, we hope by the top of next year that we will soon have something that we can actually share with the public.
That would be so exciting, and I know a lot of our members really would love that information at their fingertips.
Absolutely. And there's another too that came up often, I think that will be really helpful for caregivers in particular, and that was this notion that there's a lot of information that must happen or takes place, a lot of information exchange when you make the decision to enter into a nursing home. Deciding where to go, how you will finance that, what sort of responsibilities, authorities exist. There's just a host of information. And while it's really important, it isn't often provided or delivered in plain language. It's hard to understand, it's complicated. When you get it, makes a difference. And so we are really working on how can we sort of make it a bit more skinny, but compliant, more understandable, but certainly serving you and what you need, and in a timely way. We've heard a lot about when a person makes that decision. Sometimes the information comes later than they would like. It's quite voluminous and not easy to understand. When changes happen, information that should be shared should come about pretty quickly and in a timely way. And so these are some of the things that we're taking very seriously, because all of those things impact the ease that you have or the questions or concerns you might have about the care that's being delivered to your loved ones.
Mm-hmm. And our panelists talked about, talking about finances, mm-hmm. and, it's important to talk about what kind of care you want. Where do you want to be when you age? And having that information mm-hmm. will help inform that discussion.
Absolutely.
It's a discussion I've had with my mom. Okay, let's get down to it and talk about
right.
where you're going to go when you can't be independent anymore, and I'm 2,000 miles away.
Correct, correct. And having options, you know, I know we were speaking just a moment ago about the nursing home task force and the nursing homes, but I would like to offer that this level of transparency, this level of information, the opportunity to have real choice and to make informed decisions doesn't just rest with the nursing homes. This is across the entire spectrum of services for older Ohioans, whether it be home and community-based services, an assisted living facility, a nursing facility, you know, someone coming into your home, you perhaps taking someone to an adult day center. It really doesn't matter. You should have the transparency that you need to be able to make informed decisions about the care that's provided for your loved ones. And then having options. Your home life and your experiences very well will be very different than mine. And so what you need to be able to be comfortable to help keep your loved one safe may look very different than what I might need. And so we really want to have that level of diversity in the services that we provide, in the locations or sites of care where it's delivered, just the full gamut.
And to that point, something that a lot of folks don't realize is we have a strategic plan on aging.
Correct.
And a multi-sector strategic plan on aging covering the whole spectrum of housing to nursing homes and everything in between that you would need. So could you describe our state plan on aging and the elements that would support our family caregivers here in the state?
So the state plan on aging is something that is required by every state. The federal government requires it. I believe ours runs right now from 2023 to 2026. And we were a bit ahead of the curve in that prior to our state plan on aging, we worked on what is known as our strategic action plan on aging. And just to give you a bit more context even behind that, it's aligned with what our state has, what is known as a state health improvement plan. Every state must have a state health improvement plan. And this is where you look at the state and say, you know, how healthy it is, or where do we need to focus. My concern was that we did not have a laser focus on those issues that impacted older Ohioans. And when you look at this segment of the population and the growth of it, it was absolutely necessary to do so. And so through that, we brought together many parties, I believe 70 plus different parties to be able to contribute to this plan. Now from that plan, that set us up really nicely. One, we did a summary assessment of Ohio, and we were able to see that across our state, we have more than a 29-year gap in life expectancy depending upon where you live. So that was number one. So we understood where the most support perhaps was needed. Two, we then began to see what are those things that contribute to this decrease or this disparity in life expectancy, and where can we be most useful or helpful. And so there are a variety of factors that certainly impact one's care, not just the health care itself. And so in there, within our strategic action plan on aging, which moved us nicely into our official state plan, we lay out some of those areas. And one focus area is around caregiving. What can we do to support caregivers? I will give you a sneak preview of one of the things that we're really proud of that we're doing is that tomorrow, for those of you who might not be aware, we are really proud that we are launching our first caregiver center in the state of Ohio in partnership with the Ohio State University College of Nursing. This is an exciting time. This is a center that will be dedicated to providing resources solely for caregivers. What does that look like? What do they need? How can we provide that hands-on support for those individuals? And how can we be forward-thinking and being certain that we know the type of care that we should be providing for our caregivers?
Will the Caregiver Center just provide for Central Ohio, or will it have a statewide focus?
So it will have a statewide focus. Its physical presence is in Ohio, is in Columbus, but I will say that will be the first. We fully intend to have a network But the physical presence of the Columbus one will serve not just Central Ohio, but the entire state, because there's also a remote component to it as well. So there will be immediate access to all Ohioans, but with the goal that this will be one of many to come.
That's exciting. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. So in our multi-sector plan, how can, each and every one of us has a role in caregiving. We've talked about that. How can we use that as a tool in our planning, in our work?
Absolutely. Because we know that really great care and not just longevity of life, but quality of life is dependent upon so many factors, you can certainly find a place that you can grab onto. There are pieces in here specific to caregiving, housing, transportation, access to medical care, financial planning. I mean, it is so rich with so many things. In addition to the different topical areas, we've also identified priority populations where some of these strategies perhaps would be most impactful and where they are most needed. You also will be able to, with that state plan, with the online version, if you click in certain areas with our objectives and our strategy tables, it shows you additional resources. The more you get into the plan, the deeper it takes you. The strategies are laid out, the metrics and how you can track progress, and in fact, there's even tips on how you can implement it within your respective communities.
That's great. So, my last question.
Yes.
Where do we go from here? And if you could change anything to support older adults in the community, what would you do?
Let's get one thing.
Yeah. Or multiple, it's fine.
I think right now, this is a really pivotal time. And you hear that thrown around in different spaces for different topics. But that is, I don't think it's ever been as profound as I'm saying it now. We have an opportunity to change the narrative. And the reason you will often hear me talk about changing the narrative is because the narrative will also inform and influence the policy making and the financing that supports it. Absent having that narrative, there really is no impetus to make a change. And so that narrative has to be one where living a very long, high quality life cannot just be reserved for a few, but it has to be something attainable for all of us. And to do that, we know the things that it takes. We know that funding upstream efforts work. We understand that providing the necessary supports for caregivers so that they can continue to care for themselves and be productive within our own society and economy works. We understand that that helps to keep our funds sustainable. We understand that it helps to keep people as independent and as happy for as long as possible. It is a win-win, and candidly, we are behind. We are behind, and we have an opportunity to catch up and to gain ground in this area.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for your commitment to
Absolutely.
aging and making sure Ohioans can age where they want to age. And that's what we're about here at AARP, empowering individuals to choose how they live as they age. So I want to thank you again for joining us for this important conversation today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Holly. Thank you.
So on behalf of the millions of Ohioans who are actively navigating their journey as a family caregiver today, and the millions who will become a family caregiver in the future, thank you for joining us for this lunch. This is a conversation that we intend to continue, and we invite you to join us with the goal of finding more solutions that work for Ohioans and their loved ones. I would like to thank each of our panelists for sharing their experiences as a family caregiver and their perspective from a professional standpoint. I would also like to thank LA Catering. Please give our catering staff a big round of applause. LA Catering is a proud division of Life Care Alliance that has served the local community with nutrition and health programs since 1898. All profits from LA Catering are invested back into this community through Life Care Alliance programs and services to support older adults, medically challenged and disabled individuals here in Central Ohio. I would like to also mention Life Care will be donating and giving all of the beautiful poinsettias today to STEMs for Seniors. And they will go to nursing homes, assisted livings, and other older adults across Central Ohio. So I do ask you to join us and to stay connected and informed. We encourage you to visit our website, aarp.org/Ohio, to join our fight to support family caregivers. And thank you so much for joining us today.